Well, hello. Welcome to Reimagining Star Wars, and we're talking about the Clone Wars Season 7 with Magic Maker and Santa. And we're also going to be talking about the possibility of Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka live action in The Mandalorian. So if you want more news about that, go ahead and click the card above, and we will be talking about that shortly after this video. So with that, let's break down the video. Introduce yourself, Santa.
Oh, hello, this is Star Wars Santa, and we're ready to discuss the first of the Ahsoka arc. And from what I understand, this season has 3 arcs. We had the Bad Batch arc, then we get the Ahsoka arc, and then the next after this will be putting all the pieces together. So this is the first episode of that. We're excited to have some Ahsoka news today to go along with this episode. That's really great timing.
It is. I think they did it on purpose.
Well, really? You think? Oh.
No.
Oh, come on. Yeah, it's a totally intentional and smart. Really good.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
So, what did you think of this whole arc, or this beginning of the arc? And, I've seen some meh reviews, I've seen some blah reviews, and I don't think I agree with either one of them, actually.
Yeah, I love Ahsoka so much. I was happy to get another episode with her in it. I think a lot of people are wanting to jump straight into the Siege of Mandalore and let's go. So there's a little impatience on the fans' part. For me, I'm happy to get this episode, and I thought it was well enough done. And it picks up immediately after season 5, episode 20, when Ahsoka walks away from the Jedi Temple, and you're dealing with her emotions and thoughts and what she's going through at the moment. And I thought it was really good to get to see her like struggling with, who am I? What am I going to do? What? So I liked it.
I agree. I mean, I did think it was a little meandering, but I think that is on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I think they wanted it that way is because, in the same way that episode seems to be grasping for a purpose, Ahsoka's grasping for a purpose.
Yeah.
She's just walked away from what has been her lifelong purpose, was to be a Jedi. And so now the idea is to kind of give us, it seems like a generic story, but really it's her trying to figure out what life is all about. I mean, you see her as she's very black and white and what's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear that the 2 new characters don't see it that way. And so we're introduced to these after these 2 new characters after Ahsoka crashes on their platform. And the first character we're introduced to is, of course, Trace. And then, Gone with a Trace is the name of the episode. And so she immediately learns that nothing gets done on level 1313 without credits, and or basically without something to trade or barter, right?
Yep.
And so, and that's where she's introduced. I mean, she can't get out of there with her speeder bike, without tools, and even the tools will cost her money. And so, basically, Trace offers her access to those tools, but that somehow or another, Ahsoka is going to have to barter, trade, or work for the money to pay back the use of tools and parts.
Yep.
And so Ahsoka's a little miffed that everything's costing her. I guess she's lived and though I may have had this argument with other people, I'm pretty sure it wasn't with you. The Jedi live a privileged life. And she is seeing that most people don't.
Well, I think Trace put it well with every time she talks about Coruscant and her future and getting away from Coruscant, she mentions about the Jedi, getting away from the Jedi and all the issues, right? The first time she says, with the Jedi starting wars and policing everything. So she's got a very negative view of the Jedi. And then later she talks again like um, they want to go into space and that they want to get away from the Jedi and all the trouble that are along with it. So Ahsoka's starting to see that while they were at war and their lives were in jeopardy every day, and they were certainly fighting for the Republic and for freedom for people, that's not how they were perceived by the common folks who are like on level 1313. Um,
Right.
and I think you got to remember too, this comes immediately after hearing um, her friend talk about the Jedi being on the wrong side of this whole thing, and her going through that whole trial and ordeal, and seeing that the Jedi Council was complicit and just letting her go to the stocks, you know. Um, so the Jedi are. She doesn't know quite where to put that category of her life.
No, absolutely. She's trying to figure it out. That's kind of the point, right? She's
Yep.
hearing opposing views to the way she's seen things. She's seen things in very black and white, and she even argues from a very black and white position, like that's wrong. And to which, because basically as the episode takes along, she's working, and in addition to that, we have her introduced this freighter that's being souped up so that she can travel around the galaxy. Basically, a Han Solo kind of character, I would say, kind of how she envisions herself.
Yeah.
And then how Trace, and then we get introduced to her sister Rafa.
Yep.
And but Rafa is introduced as a name first, because what does Rafa's dealings lead to trouble, of course, for Trace, because Trace ends up having to try to fight off these thugs that Rafa owes money to.
Yeah.
And without Ahsoka, she'd have been in deep trouble and probably taken as a hostage to ensure that Rafa paid off, these thugs in order to get her back. So she would have become a pawn of that transaction. And so because Ahsoka's there, that changes that, right?
Right. Well, and to me, you mentioned about Han Solo. Rafa is, to me, a closer mirror to Han Solo, because he's wheeling and dealing. She doesn't always come through, but she's always plotting and scheming for, to get ahead. She's like living on the edge. To me, that followed a lot closer to a Han Solo kind of thing. And
right.
Yeah, and then Trace ends up having to cash the check that Rafa wrote, right?
Right.
Rafa's out there writing checks,
Right.
and it's up to Trace to fill them. Hey, we'll build these droids for you, and you could buy them. And then, okay, Trace, go build some droids. Like, is that even something?
That's what it is. Yeah. Well, I would say together they would make the Han Solo character.
Yeah.
So Trace sees herself, as a traveling the galaxy and doing whatever she has to do, but having fun away from the troubles and travails of Coruscant. And Rafa sees them as become swindling their way into money.
Yep.
And so that's so together they make that character of a Han Solo, because that's the total of who Han Solo is, right?
Yeah.
He's swindling himself into what he thinks will be, out of trouble once and for all, able to pay for everything, but yet he has his ship, and that's his home, and that's where he travels, and that's his escape from the responsibilities of life.
Yeah.
And so together they make up that whole that's that character. They're one, and they're two sides of his one character.
Yeah, I like that you've made that connection, because one of the biggest part of the show, or the action part of the show, follows similarly to another Han Solo kind of exploit that we've seen in the movies, and his story is certainly much larger than we have in the movies. But in The Force Awakens, with the Raftars and them getting loose and causing all kinds of havoc and tearing up everything, you see in this episode that the binary load lifters, that are actually repurposed demolition droids, they one of them doesn't get a restraining bolt on it, and it goes and just wreaks havoc everywhere, and there is a huge chase, and it's running over things, destroying things, just messing up the whole world. And so since you bring up Han Solo, I can't help but think of, how similar it is to the Raftars escaping in The Force Awakens. Of course, the circumstances are different things, but you can still see the kind of havoc that was strewn about by that binary load lifter getting loose. It was good.
No, absolutely, and it actually mimics a lot of other stuff in Legends too with Han Solo. So yeah. I mean, you're right on with that. I think that as one of the things I thought was funny about those binary load lifters / destruction droids, and Vega's actually the one that commented that she's like, man, those binary load lifters destruction droid thingies can really move.
Yeah, they can.
It's like, I mean, are they like construction droids, or isn't it just like a crane with a a wrecking ball? I mean, you don't see those. They wouldn't stand up to a tank, but this thing's moving like it's a combat droid.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I was like, I looked over and went, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's very agile. And then she looked at me and went, what's agile mean?
Okay. I was thinking, put a couple of those in go back to the Solo movie where the droids were combating each other. I'd like to see two of these in a ring going at it,
I know. It would be much more than anything we saw there. I was like, yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, I would have rather have seen in a way that thing just like doesn't really take off in that manner.
Yeah.
Like it would just start bulldozing everything in front of it, and they like can't get in front of it because it's just bashing everything,
Right.
And so that, to me, that would have been more what's the word I'm looking for? More believable. But I mean, I get it. They were trying to create this chase type tension.
Yeah, it created the chase scene. I agree with you. I think it would have caused plenty of havoc if it was just like bashing everything around, and they couldn't get on it. They couldn't get to shut it off.
Right.
And it's just destroying everything. And you could have still had a situation with the Martez sisters. They, everything they own, everything they have is just getting demolished. The ship that Trace has been building, their quarters, everything just completely smashed. And at the end, they could have been dealing with the aftermath of everything they own is now completely destroyed.
Right.
That could have set up a really good situation as far as now they're devastated, and then Ahsoka feels like, well, how can I help these two get back on their feet, or at least recover from this tragic loss of everything they own. Could have been good. Yeah.
And so you can make that comment that droid could cost us more than we're making on this gig.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it would have been nice to have seen that kind of thing actually occur. I mean, if I have a criticism of these, as this is coming out, is that we have statements and things that are being said that they don't follow through on them. So to me, that's that's poor writing, and I would rather see it be followed through on when they set these things up.
I agree. So the episode, it felt a little bit short to me. Um, they do kind of pin they get on top of the loose droid, and Trace is eventually able to shut it off by clicking the green button on its face. Just as it was met a mom and her daughter, she gets it shut off. Ahsoka ends up using the Force to pull it back onto the surface before it falls over the cliff, and Trace would go with it because she kind of saves the day. And only the little girl standing on the platform noticed Ahsoka using the Force. And so,
right, because he did. She tried to do it subtly. It was very interesting.
right, it was she. I thought, why doesn't she just jump like through the whole chase scene and everything? Like, why doesn't she just go for it? Obviously, she's trying to hide the fact that she is a Jedi, hide the fact that she has Force abilities, and she doesn't want Trace or her sister Rafa knowing that
Right.
this is where she comes from. She's trying to hide this part of her past. Um,
Yep, absolutely.
yeah. So you already alluded to it at the end. Rafa ends up selling the droids. She gets the credits back, and they at least got the debt collectors off their backs. And she's promising that things are going to get better. And pretty soon, the debt collectors will be coming to them to get money instead of to borrow money instead of collect money. And that's how the episode ends.
Well, I mean, what it tells you is that really there's always multiple bad decisions, and it never goes the way that they think it will.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always the setup for bad business, always occurring, right? I mean, it's the trope. So I mean, overall, I thought it was a pretty good episode, but there was one really good line, in my opinion.
Yes.
And it's probably the best part of the whole thing.
Yes.
I haven't talked about it, but see if you think it's the same one.
Oh, absolutely.
You go ahead.
I am 100% sure that we have the same line. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I know for sure that there's a scene where Ahsoka is with Rafa with Trace, and the debt collectors show up. It's Pintu and his crew, and they start kind of putting the heavy on Trace. And Ahsoka offers to kind of help, and Trace is like, "No, you better stand back." Eventually, Ahsoka, she, Trace is getting beat up, and says, "A little help might not be bad." And Ahsoka comes in and whoops him really good. And Trace asks her, "Wow, how did you learn to fight like that?" And then the line, right?
That's right. That's right. My brother taught me.
Yeah.
my big brother taught me.
My older brother taught me how to fight. I thought, oh, that means I know she has to be talking about Anakin. She has to.
Right. There's no doubt about it.
And that she has this connection to Anakin, not only as her master, but she thinks of him as family, as her brother, somebody she trusts and loves, with a familiar kind of love. She has this connection to him. And that's part of what was so heartrending at the end of season 5 is your heart absolutely broke for both of them as they were parting ways. And here she references him as her older brother. By far the best line of the whole show. Yeah.
Yeah, Vega loved it. She grabbed my arm and she went, "Yee!"
Yeah.
And so I mean, and it's all harkening back to that end of season 5, right?
Yeah.
And it's I mean, that just I think it was that moment where you got to go, yes, and it sort of harkens back to that emotion, and so when the tears were coming, you were trying hard to fight it back,
Yeah.
Season 5, I think it was a really good callback, and just made you remember all that. And of course, the episode began with that whole intro, and it was a really good intro to recall all that and set it up. And that was done very well.
I agree, and this one line in this one episode really sets up the scene in Rebels even more emotionally now. For those of us who have seen Rebels, and the next time, well, not maybe the next time, but in there where Ahsoka meets Vader and realizes he is Anakin, there's a scene there that was already kind of monumentous, right? And now what they're doing so brilliantly is building that to be even more significant, if that's even possible, right? It's fantastic. Right. Yeah. So, I would say this is a good start to an arc. It's certainly not the height of where we know that's going. And for the folks who are being impatient, it's like, let it develop, let this play out, enjoy it while you can, because soon enough, this is going to be over. And when this season is over and we don't have any more Clone Wars coming, then it's going to have us thirsting for more. And I think we'll talk about here in just a few minutes where we might get a little more to help satisfy that thirst.
Right. So, and with that, thank y'all for coming, and we'll be talking about the next episode in Clone Wars Season 7, and when Episode 6 comes out next Friday. So, thank y'all for coming. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please visit Santa's website. His
channel?
YouTube channel.
Yes, you can find me at Star Wars Santa, and we'd be happy to. I would just I'd be very appreciative if you come over there and you like and subscribe to my channel as well, and we'll try to give you some content while we go through new Star Wars as we get it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. May the Force be with you.